Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be looking at the average wedding costs per state. Before I begin, please consider liking and subscribing and we'll get right into it. So first we're gonna travel back into time and let's see. This article we're gonna be seeing is from Value Penguin, and it really has data from the year 2020, and it goes at the average. I mean, it looks state by state at the average cost. So back then, in the year 2020, you remember 2020, it was quite an eventful year with coronavirus. So I don't know if that factored into the cost, but back then, the average cost for a wedding, it was around 20,300. The most expensive states were from Massachusetts and New Jersey, Connecticut, like the usual suspects, which was like 30,000 average. And you have New York is always there. So the East Coast really was really expensive. California was around 26,000 around that time, but in general the average was 20,000. The more south you went, I mean, the cheaper it became. It was like Alabama, average was 15,000, all the way to Arkansas was like 12,000. That's the average cost. And the more we looked at the article, you would see like the cheapest places like Alabama was 15,000, and the cost per guest was like 220,000. California was, much higher, 26,000. And I did not really want to use much of this article because the data is based from 2020, before, like the rampant inflation. So it's really not really that very accurate. It's old data. But I would assume things remained much more the same in terms of the East Coast, New Jersey, New York area, California area being really expensive for weddings. And the most expensive features per this article were the venue. The venue plus catering, it averaged around 13,000. The engagement ring average is 5,000 for most. Reception band 3,000, photographer 2,000, florist. But the venue was there. Took bulk was the big thing, and engagement ring. Now, let's look at this other more recent article. This one is from Bankrate, and they have the data from like 2022 and also 2023, because inflation, they're factoring the inflation. So in this article, um, the average wedding cost, still the expense was the venue was the bulk of it, was around 11,000. It's close to 12,000 really. Engagement ring still around the same cost, but it went up like 5,800. Let's just say right around 6,000 average for engagement ring. And that's I mean, that's quite expensive for many people. The band, photographer, rehearsal dinners, DJs, all those also factored in to the cost, but it was quite high. Now looking at with inflation factored in, with inflation we see that okay, with inflation, looking at the states now, New Jersey is the highest, is one of the highest cost at 51,000. That is a ridiculous amount, to be honest. To pay 51,000 for a wedding, it's quite high. I mean, some people, if you can afford it, good for you, but in general, 51,000 for a wedding is very, very high, and it's it's a lot for most people. We have Massachusetts, 46,000, New York, 46,000, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, D.C., they're all above 40,000 and above for wedding cost. California is 37,000. It's just quite different from the other one. If you looked at it, the average cost was like what? They had it like New Jersey, it was like 33,000, and this one here is like 50,000. Should be a grand wedding. now, now, if you look at the southern states like Mississippi, it's 28,000. The Kentucky is 20,000. Idaho, 19,000. It is much cheaper, like in some states like Oklahoma, Utah is 16,000. Still quite expensive for most people. And there is also the factor that marriage weddings are in a decline, especially in Western countries like in America. Weddings are in a decline, and also the divorce rate is very high, quite high. Now, just for fun, I wanted to look at the average cost to considering our neighbor down south, which is Mexico, to see how much it's gonna cost to do a wedding in Mexico if you would rather escape the cost in America and you look at Mexico. Now, this one is a blog. It's just a wedding blog. So I found it, and the average cost of a wedding in Mexico. Of course, there is no limit. There is no maximum to what you can spend. You can spend if you want a million or whatever, you can spend it. But if you want to know average cost, it's between 5,000 and 12,000. So if you look at American list, the cheapest is in Utah and Oklahoma, average 16,000, and in Mexico the average is between 5,000 and 12,000. So it is way cheaper than the cheapest place in America. Oh, who would have thought that? No. So it all depends on location. If you decide to go to wedding in Mexico, like you can see down here they had like let me see. They had a breakdown of places based on location, average cost per location. Oh, here it is. So average cost, if you're in the east coast of Mexico, if you want a wedding in Tulum, it's going to be between 5,000 and 10,000. Cancun, between 2,000 and 10,000. That's much more friendlier compared to the 51,000 in New Jersey. If you want to do a wedding in Playa del Carmen, it's between 3,000 to 8,000. Sorry for my accent. It's not the best Spanish accent. Riviera Maya is anywhere between 2,000 and 12,000. The west coast of Mexico, Cabo San Lucas, is going to be between 20,000 and 100,000. That's quite expensive. In Puerto Vallarta, it's going to be between 5,000 and 20,000. But in general, if you do wedding in Mexico between 5,000 and 12,000, you should be good. In America, not so much. Now that's all I had for today. If you like the video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment, and I will see you on the next one.